Let's start with Oregon. What's my record prediction for the Oregon Ducks for 2026? I've been back and forth on this between 10-2 and 11-1. I have Oregon making the playoff. I may even have them represented in the Big Ten championship game once I release my college football playoff 2.0 predictions. But you just look at the schedule for Oregon, and it's a lot tougher compared to what it was last year. Think about it. You're at USC in week 4. You have to go to Illinois on October 24th. You're at Ohio State on November 7th. You have Michigan in there, and then you end the season with Washington. That is a tough schedule. Certainly one of the tougher schedules in the Big Ten. I'm going to say 11-1. I'm going to say 11-1 for the Oregon Ducks. I do think they will slip up in Columbus if I had to pick. That game at Columbus on November 7th, that is going to be a challenge. But I think Oregon is a good enough team where 11-1, certainly not out of the realm of possibility, and that would maybe even guarantee them a spot in the Big Ten championship game, probably would. And with that comes a bid in the college football playoff for the 3rd consecutive season. Let's go to Ohio State. Ohio State, you want to talk about tough schedules in the Big Ten. Let me just read this off to you. For Ohio State, you have at Texas in week 2, Illinois in week 4. You're at Iowa the next week. You have to go to Indiana on October 17th, which, by the way, biggest home game in the history of Indiana football. You have to go to USC on Halloween, going cross-country for that one. You have Oregon on November 7th. You have to travel to Nebraska on November 21st, my birthday. And then you end the season, the game with Michigan. Ohio State may be the best team in the country. But you go through that roster, and it is incredibly challenging, just a meat grinder, something that we're not used to seeing with Ohio State. Usually Ohio State schedules are pretty light, but this is not light. This is anything but light. It's hard for me to envision a world in which Ohio State doesn't go throughout the season without slipping up a couple of times. So I have Ohio State at 10-2. Moving to Indiana, the national champs of 2026. So I'm not going to come on here and say that Indiana is going to replicate what they did last year. I am still high on them. I absolutely do believe they can contend for a national championship once again. The quarterback situation, Josh Hoover, Curt Cignetti, very confident that he's everything that they need at quarterback. So if he says it, I'm willing to trust it too. They have one of the best left tackles, I even may argue the best left tackle in college football, in Carter Smith. You go to the defensive side of the ball. The linebacking core, I envision as being top 3 nationally. The defensive line only got stronger within the last couple of weeks, adding Stephen Daly. The secondary, really good secondary for Indiana, despite having to replace some pieces. But this is something that we're not used to talking about with Indiana, because they have a really, really cupcake non-conference schedule, right? You have North Texas, you have some dude named Howard, you have Western Kentucky, and then you start conference play with Northwestern, at Rutgers, at Nebraska. Indiana, in theory, should be 6-0 by the time they play Ohio State at home in Bloomington on October 17th. Then you have at Michigan the next week. USC's in there. You're at Washington on November 21st. That is a lot tougher Big Ten slate for Indiana than what we're used to seeing in the last couple of years from them. So I think Indiana's going to go 10-2. But a 10-2 Indiana is still good enough to get in the college football playoff. And if it comes down to, you have an 11-1 Oregon, you have a 10-2 Ohio State, 10-2 Indiana, your top 3 teams in that conference, that next spot in the Big Ten championship may come down to that Ohio State game. Partly why I say that's the biggest game in Indiana football history, the biggest home game. Huge stakes are on the line in that game. So I have Indiana going 10-2 for USC. I've been way too high on USC to backtrack now, but when talking about USC, and we typically don't talk about this with teams in the Big Ten, but USC was given no favors on their schedule. We know it's playoff or bust for Lincoln Riley and USC, partly because there's no other choice. It's year 5. You have to make the playoffs. I had to fight against my better judgment on this, but this is what it boils down to for USC. They have 5 games where they have Oregon, they have Washington, both of those games at home. They're at Penn State for the whiteout game. They're at Indiana, and they also have Ohio State. That game is at home. If you're USC, in order to make the playoff, you have to get 3 of those games, at least. You have to get 3 of those games. I have USC going 10-2. I'm trusting that the defense is massively improved. I'm trusting that line of scrimmage is going to be able to compete with the best of the conference. Call me crazy, but I have USC making the playoffs, and I have them going 10-2 as well. Moving on, Michigan. A lot of this is dependent on Bryce Underwood. And Jason Beck is their offensive coordinator, who Kyle Whittingham brought over from Utah. And Jason Beck, historically, has had great success as the offensive play caller. A few years ago, he was at New Mexico. He took a team that was ranked 44th in the country offensively to 4th in the span of 1 year. At Utah last year, he took an offense that was ranked 104th in 2024 and took him to 4th this last year. Will he be able to do the same at Michigan? Will he be able to get every last drop out of the sponge out of Bryce Underwood as possible? I want to see if the magic continues. I actually have Michigan going 9-3 this year. You have a game at Iowa. You're at Minnesota. Bye week, you have Penn State, Indiana, at Oregon, at Ohio State to end the year. Again, you're just seeing teams in the Big Ten disproportionately with tougher schedules than others. And Michigan has another one of those tough schedules. And if you're looking at their schedule today, they face 6 teams that are in the preseason top 25. If Michigan goes 9-3 this year, I don't think it's a bad year, but I also want to know what Bryce Underwood looks like. Moving on to the Washington Huskies. Washington, I'm just going to venture out on a limb here and say that they'll be 4-0 by the time they have to go to Los Angeles to take on USC. Washington State, Utah State, Eastern Washington, Minnesota, all at home. Washington's going to be 4-0 by the time they go to USC. And have that game circled. October 3rd, Washington at USC. As I talked about when I was reacting to the AP poll, Washington at 17, that is the dark horse. That is the team that can mess up so much for other teams in the Big Ten, because they play Iowa, they play Penn State, they play Indiana, they play Oregon, they play USC. All of these teams which are hopeful to be in the race for the Big Ten championship, you get a couple of upsets in there. I wouldn't call them upsets, but you get Washington knocking off a couple of those teams, and suddenly that picture looks a lot muddier. I have Washington going 9-3 this year. For Iowa, model of consistency out there in Iowa City under Kirk Ferentz. I think 8-4 is fair for Iowa this year. Going to have a good run game. Going to have a good offensive line, because when does Iowa not have a good offensive line? Defense is going to be good. Don't expect a lot of explosive plays down the field. I have Iowa going 8-4. For Penn State, this is what I was talking about. Teams that disproportionately have harder schedules in the Big Ten compared to what Penn State has to, for example. I mean, let me just read this Penn State schedule to you. Marshall. I wish I was making this up, but I'm not. Penn State has to travel to Temple to play a game in week 2. For those of you that think I was making that up, let me repeat that. Penn State has to travel to Temple for a game in week 2. Okay. Buffalo in week 3, Wisconsin week 4. They're at Northwestern, USC at Michigan, Purdue at Washington, Minnesota, Rutgers at Maryland. If Matt Campbell were to set up his first schedule ever in the Big Ten, that's probably how he would have it set up. Where your really tough games that I'm circling if I'm Penn State are USC, Michigan on the road there, and you're at Washington. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Penn State's able to go 10-2 this year. I don't have them going 10-2. I think 9-3 is pretty fair for Penn State, but I mean, when you're talking about playoff contention for Penn State, I don't think it's a crazy conversation. But I have Penn State going 9-3. For Illinois, Brett Bielema really doesn't get enough credit for how good of a job that he's done at Illinois. They have 19 wins the last 2 years. 9 wins last year, 10-win season before that. I really like Katin Hauser, who's going to be their quarterback this year, transferred from East Carolina. Before that was at Michigan State. One of the better dual threat quarterbacks, I think, in the portal. But I have Illinois. I see them as being a tier 3 team in the Big Ten. I have Illinois going 8-4 this year. For Minnesota, I've talked about Minnesota being maybe a dark horse team in the Big Ten. Pretty tough schedule for Minnesota, but I have Minnesota going 6-6, which would guarantee them bowl eligibility once again. Nebraska, year 4 for Matt Rule. Can't fire him because you just extended him. When Penn State tried to come after him and tried to poach him from Lincoln, you doubled down and you extended him through, I think it's 2031. So unless you want to pay a massive buyout, which I wouldn't suggest, then you're riding with Matt Rule. So year 4, what does it look like for Nebraska? A transfer portal quarterback, Anthony Calandria, by way of UNLV. For Nebraska, it's not going to be – I don't see Nebraska being in playoff contention this year. But I do have good news. If you're Will Compton, you're out there listening, Nebraska could be 5-0 by the time they play Indiana about midway through their schedule here. Think about it. You get Ohio on September 5th, Bowling Green on September 12th, North Dakota, you're at Michigan State, and you have Maryland. If I'm Nebraska and I have the roster talent edge over all those teams that I just listed, you should be 5-0 by the time you host Indiana on October 10th. But it's a rough 4-game stretch following that. Let me read this 4-game stretch to you. You have Indiana at home. You go to Oregon. You have a bye week. Then you have Washington at home, which I'm told is going to be the blackout game on Halloween, which would be a great environment. And then you're at Illinois. That's all in the period of 4 games. That's a really tough back half for Nebraska. I have them going 8-4, which would be a 1-win improvement from where they were last year. Would also get them back to a bowl game this year. For Northwestern, God did them no favors when it came to scheduling. Woo! South Dakota State in week 1, bye week. Because who amongst us doesn't need a bye week after playing South Dakota State? No offense to the Jackrabbits. But you think about having a bye week after week 1, and then you have 11 straight games. They have at Indiana in there. They have Penn State in there. They're at Oregon. They have Iowa. They're at Ohio State. They end the year with Illinois. It's going to be a meat grinder of a schedule for the Wildcats. The good news is their offensive coordinator this year, pretty well known around the college football community, Chip Kelly. I think that this will be – the record may not show it, but this could be an improved team in 2026. I have Northwestern getting back to a bowl. I have them going 6-6, which I think would be a good season considering that schedule. And they're trying to up their financial support up there in Evanston to try to make their football team a little bit better. For Wisconsin, Luke Fickell, there's no question that he's on the hot seat. A lot of this is dependent on quarterback play. They've been stake bitten at the quarterback position, but they got a transfer portal quarterback by the name of Colton Joseph out of Old Dominion. One of the better quarterbacks in the portal, I believe. I have Wisconsin going 6-6 this year, which would get them to a bowl game. But is 6-6 going to be good enough to save Luke Fickell's job? I don't know. UCLA, Bob Chesney coming over by way of James Madison. I've talked about Bob Chesney very glowingly on the show. 16 seasons as a head coach, only one losing season. The rest, he's had a winning season, 15 years as a head coach. So he goes to UCLA. He takes over a program that went 4-8 last year. You returned your quarterback in Nico Iamaleava. A lot of this for me is blind faith in a guy like Bob Chesney because I believe this hire will work out for the Bruins. Getting to a bowl in your first year at UCLA, I don't think is a bad year. So I have UCLA going 6-6 this year. Now we start to get to where it's not really fun to talk about, and I can kind of just blow right through this. Michigan State, first year under Pat Fitzgerald, a lot of work to do. If they were able to make a bowl game this year, that would be a great season for them. I don't see that. I have Michigan State going 4-8. For Maryland, 2 straight 4-8 seasons for them. I have them going 4-8 once again, and if they do go 4-8, Mike Locksley is probably fired because he's definitely on the hot seat. Purdue, I have Purdue going 2-10. Don't really need to elaborate there. Not a good situation in Purdue right now. And then for Rutgers, what you don't know about Rutgers is because they're not talked about a lot. They have one of the better receivers in the Big Ten by the name of KJ Duff. He was a 1,000-yard receiver last year, was a preseason All-American. And then they have a running back by the name of Antoine Raymond who rushed for over 1,300 yards last year and 13 touchdowns. So they have good players. Just outside of that, Greg Schiano, if they go anything less than 6-6, he's probably fired too. I have Rutgers going 3-9, which would probably mean not good things coming for Greg Schiano and Rutgers.